What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be showing you 3 ways to improve your Python code. And by improve Python code, I mean in terms of the readability and just the syntax of your Python code. And this is actually generally just really important when you do write Python code, is to conform to the PEP 8 styling guide, because this is essentially the international guide for styling your code. And following this is essentially the industry standard. In a lot of jobs, you'll find yourself, if you're doing code reviews, your code is being reviewed, you'll be flagged for a lot of styling issues. Especially me being almost 2 years in the industry, I still find myself being flagged for certain violations of PEP 8. So if you get this down, you'll be ahead of the game. In fact, a lot of advanced engineers don't follow a lot of this, so you can really set yourself apart as a new beginner by following this, and you can potentially impress your manager or your other coworkers around you. And also, just in general, it's really good to follow standards in code because they're made for a reason. It's made for the code to be more efficient, easy to read, and it's generally streamline the code and make it easier for people to work on your code in the future. So before we jump into these 3 points that I'm going to share for PEP 8, I just want you guys to like, comment, subscribe if you think this is going to be useful to you, and if you have enjoyed my videos in the past as well. So that being said, let's jump into 3 points and let's get started real quick. Okay, point number 1, imports. So a lot of the times as a new Python programmer, what you're finding yourself doing is just importing as you go along. Your imports are just generally misorganized in one big block. And that's not the PEP 8 standard, that's not the industry standard. So instead, what we want to do is organize in 3 blocks, and within those blocks, it has to be in alphabetical order. So the first block is going to be Python standard libraries. And Python standard libraries are just the libraries that come packaged with Python itself. And if you get confused as to what a Python standard library is, or you're not sure, you can just go to this link here. Python standard library. I'll link this in the description below. So let's just go ahead and do that. So we have datetime, which is a Python standard library, and then we have sys. Okay, bam, bam, and then we have these guys, which are external that we pip installed. NumPy, pandas, very common libraries. People use those a lot in the industry, and I'm sure you guys probably have used those as well if you're working with data. And finally, we have our internal libraries, which is code we have from our internal directories and projects that we import. So these are already in an alphabetical order. So I'm just going to do that here. And of course, they have to be all the way on the top. So I'm just going to do that. And as you can see, the blocks are separated by 1 space, which is good. And that's pretty much it. And one more thing, what you want to do is make sure you don't have any unused imports. That looks really bad. And over time, it can just clog your projects and maybe make people confused as to like why you have these imports. So let's just go ahead and delete that because we're not using it in the code below. By the way, this is just nonsense code. It's not really doing anything. So it's just to show that we have some code. But yeah, so in terms of imports, this is how you want to do it at a high level. And let's jump straight into point number 2. Okay, point number 2, let's talk about Whitespace. Now, Whitespace is something that's not really considered, especially if you're a new Python programmer, but it's also something that you should really try to take care of and something that can affect the way your code looks and just make your code more professional. So let's talk about the Python PEP 8 standards, or most of the standards that can help your code look better in terms of Whitespace. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have 4 space indents in your blocks of code. So as you can see with this dummy function I have here, I have a 2 space indent, which is not good. And some companies do have 2 space indents, but generally most people follow the 4 space block indent. So I'm just going to tab this over and have a 4 space indent for my whole code block there. And then another thing you want to consider is you don't want to have lines more than 79 characters. So as you can see with this long list here, I have clearly more than 79 characters. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to break it apart like this. And because we're continuing the list, what we want to do is we want to have a 4 space indent as a continuation. So that's actually the standard, is to have a 4 space continuation as well. Now, some other things here that I'm seeing in this function are, we have this dummy variable sign. And to some people that may look good, but you actually properly have to have a space after a variable name and a space after the equal there in accordance with PEP 8 standards. And some other things here is we have our file level functions and classes actually have to be separated by 2 lines as opposed to 1 line there. So, and then the top level function has to be separated by 2 lines from the imports. So we just did that instead. Now, another thing we want to consider here is this dictionary. Dictionaries are very common in Python, and a lot of people don't get the white space there correctly. So what you want to do is actually have no space after the key, but you want to keep a space after the colon. And then you want to have a space after every comma. And I'm just going to delete that. And that's the proper way to have your dictionary formatted in terms of white space. You don't want to have this where you have spaces on the left and right. I've seen people do that, and that's just not in accordance with the standards. So just don't do that. And that's pretty much how you function a dictionary, which is a very common aspect of Python. And finally, let's talk about class level files or class level functions here. As you can see, I have two class level functions, and then you can see they're separated by no lines. The rule for class level functions is we actually want to separate them by one line as opposed to two lines. And those are just some general whitespace practices you should follow in your Python code. Hopefully incorporate those in your code and it'll make your code look more professional and better. And it's generally make your code look more readable. So let's jump into point number 3. Okay, third and final point for this video is string formatting. Now, as a new beginner, this is something you often forego or forget about, and something I did as well. But what you want to do is you want to follow the standard for formatting strings. As a Python 3.6, that standard is actually f strings. So as you can see here, we have 3 other techniques: the C-style format, str.format, and concatenating, which you generally don't want to do or you want to avoid as much as possible in pretty much all the cases. So if I go ahead and run this, you can see they produce the same thing. But just to sum it up, fstring solves a lot of the shortcomings of all these methods, and it was something the Python community was aware about, and that's why they came up with this fstring formatting. And so if you're using Python 3.6 and above, please absolutely try your best to use fstring formatting. It'll just make your code look better, make it more flexible in the future, make your code look more professional, and it'll just make your life a lot easier, especially if you're working in big projects with a lot of string formatting. And now, in terms of expressiveness, terseness, and clarity, it's just utterly superior to the other 3 methods here. And that's pretty much it for this video. I mean, really try to use this, really try to incorporate the other methods. I hope you guys absolutely learned something in this video. If you learn even a minor thing as a beginner or an advanced programmer, please like, comment, subscribe, because I sincerely believe it's the minor things over time that add up and make you an expert programmer. So I'm going to make more videos like this in terms of coding standards that you can easily incorporate to your code just to make it better. And hopefully over time, if you follow this channel, you'll just generally learn things about Python and other aspects of formatting Python and cool techniques in Python that you could incorporate in your code to make you a better programmer. So that being said, please stay tuned to the channel, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take it easy. Thank you.